Good afternoon, and welcome to the Word Ninja podcast. We are a 2-hour ramble of writers surviving muses and battling writer's blocks. We're here today on August 28th, 2013 for episode 8.
18th.
Close enough.
Like I said, it ain't that late yet. Whoa, where the hell did August go?
And now I've lost my train of thought. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm Charles. My co-hosts and distractors are Calvin and Ed. We are not joined by Will today. He got kidnapped to go to work.
Stupid work captors.
Wild place of work.
Yeah, he's too busy off making money.
Tends to happen sometime.
It does come in handy every once in a while, I guess.
True, true.
I wanted yawn. Don't look at me.
As usual, we tend to kick off our little podcast with literary news for the week. And for this week, we're starting things off with the 5 biggest fiction writing mistakes and how to fix them. And this one can be found at writersdigest.com. It's from the 13th of this month, and the proper link will be in our show notes after the full episode. Alright, there it goes. My internet is unusually slow today, so it takes a while to load for some reason.
No
I
worries.
was scanning this one. I actually run into these problems a lot with people in the RP world.
I just found the titles of the 5 mistakes rather amusing. And I've skimmed some of the rest of it, but I haven't gotten a chance to go into detail about them. But for those of you listening, writing mistake number 1, happy people in a happy land. Stories are not usually just sunshine and unicorns. There has to be conflict and chaos to make things interesting and make sure the plot keeps on moving.
I mean, this one, for me, I don't see any real problem with starting out maybe like the first page or two, having a happy little sunshine world, because half the fun is destroying said happy little sunshine world.
True.
Yeah,
there's allowed to be a minimum amount of peace.
Yeah. Excuse me while I be attacked by a cat. You pain in the ass, I'm gonna lock you in the other room.
No peace allowed for you.
No. Never.
Mm.
You're not going to randomly attack me. You're going to stay where I can see you. We have a podcast, cat. Because I'm tired of being attacked. Read a story about you. Yeah.
I think the mistake number 1 can be easily summed up by the second paragraph in that one, where it says, but readers actually engage with plot via trouble, threat, change, or challenge. If everything is just happy and peaceful throughout the whole book, why should we bother reading it?
Especially because nobody's life is like that, so they can't identify with it.
Hmm.
If you've got that perfect, happy little life, you're deluding yourself.
Either that or you have some very good medication.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that.
And it kind of ties into the mistake number 2, a world without fear. The best novels, the ones that stay with you all the way to the end and beyond, have the threat of death hanging over every scene. I wouldn't necessarily say every scene, but there has to be some sort of consequence or challenge the characters face, I would think.
Well, she goes into, like, different kinds of death, too, not just, like, physical death.
Oh yeah, she split it up in, I think, 3 ways.
Yeah.
There's physical, professional, and psychological. Physical is kind of obvious.
Hmm.
Professional is more along the lines of, like, you screwed your career irrevocably. Well, almost irrevocably. Well, depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
And then you also have psychological death, dying on the inside. It's basically your character implodes under the weight of their own sadness and trying to deal with life.
Sounds my specialty.
I usually deal more with the physical deaths and consequences.
Hmm. Psychological deaths seem to be more my speed for some reason.
I don't know, because somehow it seems more painful to, like, watch them deteriorate from the inside out like that.
Hmm.
But then again, like I said, it's more painful, and thus we torture them a bit more. Or we use a combination of physical death and psychological death.
Maybe you can go for the trifecta and do it by killing them through their job.
Or their job kills someone they love, which makes them die inside. Get fun with cop ones doing that.
We're not really helping the stereotype of us being horrible people to our characters, are we?
I do not deny this fact at all.
We never said that we weren't.
I am very guilty of mistake number 3, the marshmallow dialogue. I have a lot of trouble with writing too much fluff.
I get forced into it a lot. Because like I said, I'm an RP writer, so I get, when you get this kind of stuff, it's kind of hard not to respond with that kind of stuff, because they give you absolutely squat to work with. Probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
I found that doing the marshmallow type of dialogue writing helps on the back end, just to try and figure things out between the characters, but then I cut about 80 to 90% of it before any readers actually get to see it.
Okay. Hi.
Well, that seems to be exactly how the author here tells you how to combat that. It's start off fluffy and just hack away the fluff afterwards.
You
Seems to
just
be
use your red pen like a machete.
yes.
Oh, I don't have my red pen at the moment.
Mistake number 4, predictability. That one can be a little trickier to deal with, depending
Mm.
on what you're writing about and how well known it can be. And their fix of just put something unexpected in every scene can only work to a certain degree, I would think. How many unexpected things can you throw at your characters before it just starts getting silly?
Well, it depends on what kind of unexpected twist you throw at your characters. I mean, if like everybody gets anvils dropped on them in like somebody gets anvils dropped on them in every chapter, it might lose its edge slightly. Or maybe you can just change it up slightly. Instead of an anvil, maybe a chair or piano.
I don't know, an anvil's pretty durable. I don't think you'll be able to soften that one too much. I think it'll keep its edge.
Wow. Okay.
Just a little food for thought there.
But I like to use things like phones ringing and or noises outside or just simple little things.
How about mistake number 5, the lost love? Does everyone really need to find a lost love? If you lost it, sometimes there's a reason for it.
See, this one, I don't know. I think this is a typical cliche of young adult writing.
Maybe we're misinterpreting it, and it's more for between the writer itself and the novel, as I'm just rereading the first paragraph. Writing a book is like falling in love. Outlining and planning are the wooing. Drafting the novel is your commitment to marriage. But at some point, you and your book will likely need some marriage counseling. Because when you lose the verb for your material, it shows.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so I guess this one's more a matter of the writer losing passion for the book they're writing about at some point, and then just pushing through because it's for the sake of the overall book. Yeah, I can see how that can be a mistake at times, because if you don't care for the book anymore, it can show through between the lines and whatnot.
Well, yeah, because your writing style changes too. I've noticed a lot of times, like again, what I normally see when someone's really into a storyline. You know, you've got huge posts, you've got all kinds of emotion, all kinds of action, everything. When they're just trying to put a post out there or just trying to put something out, it tends to be very lazy, and you don't draw in the same way.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that style of writing from time to time.
Oh, I think we all have.
Hmm.
There are just some days and muses don't cooperate.
It's usually when there's a deadline.
Yeah. Or when you're trying to make them do something they don't want to do.
But yes, that is the 5 biggest fiction writing mistakes. And it goes into detail as to this person's opinion as to how to fix them. I have a feeling there's more than just those 5 mistakes that us writers make. I know I make more than just 5.
I think we all fall into little cliches and then things like that.
Those seem to have been just like the more egregious of cliches.
Writing mistakes. Question mark? I guess we can roll on to literary news piece number 2. Writing tips for content writers. And this one is over on Catherine Aragon's blog. One.
That's exciting.
I'm skimming. Music.
Ah.
Okay. I like the first point here. Don't just write like your English teacher taught you.
Oh, but English teachers would never lie to us. Never mind that I've had plenty contradict themselves, and each other.
I don't know. The only time I think these days, but the only time I use what my English teacher taught me is more when it comes to grammatical items. You know, where you put your periods, where you sentence structures, things like that. I don't write essays anymore.
Speak for yourself. I still do.
You have to.
True.
You can't tell me that you would completely abandon them if you didn't have to do them.
I'd probably abandon some things. I've always been a fan of the tip farther down of write for your readers. But with a balance. I mean, as long...
Yeah, because it's as much for them as it is for you.
Yeah, as long as you're still having fun, that's a primary part, but if none of your readers can associate with it or kind of appreciate it, maybe a bit of tweaking is in line.
Half the fun of writing is knowing that somebody's going to be on the other side to read it. And if you're writing something that they don't like, they're not going to read it.
Mm.
I think that falls into the catch-22. They tell you, yes, write for you, write what you love, but...
If you actually want to share it with people or potentially do it for money, you have to write for the people paying you and reading it and buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, for the love of...
The parental unit keeps barging into the room.
Oh. See, this is why I like being home alone. Don't worry about that. Although parental unit is home across the way. She better stay there. Oh, because Brat Kid is at band camp.
Ah, gotcha.
She's there till Wednesday.
Very nice.
All I could think of every time she would talk about it too was the American Pie joke. This one time at band camp, and I'm sitting there, she told me she was going, and I done. Oh. But yeah, she's decided she's going to play percussion in the band this year, so she has to go to band camp.
Well, that's cool.
Someone does not seem to understand the concept of, I am being recorded right now and am on video. Perhaps you should not come in. Sorry about that. What'd I miss?
Nothing. I was just telling Calvin that the mini-me is at band camp.
Ah.
I wanted to highlight one of the sayings under Write for Your Readers. If your writing isn't working, the reader will go into the kitchen and make a cheese sandwich and never come back.
Speaking of, I could use a cheese sandwich right about now.
I could go for a cheese sandwich as well, but
I'd rather have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but that's just me.
The whole point is, if your reader goes to make a sandwich, you want them to actually come back. So, even though we did touch on writing for the stories are about writing for yourself as writing for others as much as it is writing for yourself. It usually really kind of helps to just try to see if you can get into their heads, like try to figure out who your audience is and try to see things from their perspective. And hopefully, if they like it, they can make you a cheese sandwich.
While you're out there. I think a lot of this comes into play too. If you're not writing for like your own age group, it's easy to write for people who are like you in any way, shape, or form. But like people who you get a lot of these. Funny enough, again, I will use the teen genre again. A lot of the people that write for them are like 40, 50-year-old, people, and we've been far detached from the teen years. So sometimes it's not always easy to remember that.
Well, are we talking about chronological age or emotional age? Because for me, those are two entirely different numbers.
Well, I was just using chronological age as a example.
Okay. Fair enough.
And you also have to take into consideration that your teenage years and the teenage years of the current generation are also two completely different things.
This is very true.
Considering my teenage years, I sincerely hope so.
Same here.
Ditto.
Although I admit, my teenage years, I would not have been sitting here doing this because that would have been physically impossible.
The other tip of write simply and directly sounds more like business writing rather than actual regular fiction. Although the first sentence, or the first paragraph under that, sounds a little more appropriate for the fiction writing. Writing should be as natural as talking, so write like you talk.
for my sake, I'd have to be kind of careful about that because I stammer a little bit, or a lot, depending on what I'm trying to talk about.
Well, if one of your characters has a speech impediment or gets a little nervous, depending on the situation.
I love writing stammering. Are you kidding me? But then again, I have a character that anytime you fluster him, he either yells or stammers, so. But I can see where this one comes from, especially like a lot of like modern nonfiction. People don't want to. They don't want to have to think too much about the actual words themselves.
Mm.
So I can see where someone would want to be just spit it out. I actually ran into that problem in a regular conversation yesterday. I used a big word. I used narcissism. And the person I was talking to looked at me like, what? So I was like, oops.
Too many syllables.
Yeah. I forgot who I was talking to. Great person, but you gotta keep the words small.
That kind of ties back to knowing your audience.
Mm.
That too.
Yeah, depending on the age and attention span of your audience, it can make a difference.
If you want to say that it's raining, say it's raining.
The only time that flowery descriptions and whatnot, people tend to be okay with it in Old English literature and poetry.
Technically, it would probably be more Middle English literature.
Maybe, yeah.
Translated from Old English. Considering that even Shakespeare was technically Middle English, not Old.
Yeah, okay. I never remember what the cutoff is.
I don't even remember. And I'm the English major.
But didn't Old English look like absolutely nothing like anything that resembles modern English or even Middle English for that matter?
Pretty much.
I remember the time you showed me the difference. I was like, holy crap. Okay, there's a slight difference.
Just a little one.
Yeah, at least with Shakespeare era writing, we can kind of decipher and ignore some of the extra letters that are put into all the words to make some sense, but Old English, damned if I know what it says. The next two tips are ones I always have trouble with. Start strong and end stronger. Of course, I just have a general problem with ending, period.
I think a lot of my problem is a scene will end and I won't know better enough to leave it alone.
Hmm.
So you get this whole great thing going, and then you start, and you get this whole thing going, you get the whole thing going, and like so most people would say, okay, the scene's over, right? And you would be perfectly good to stop right there. You would have both of these. You know, everything is good and strong, and life is good. And then you make the mistake of, well, I need more. So I think that's how a lot. You know, like I know for me that's kind of how I screw this up.
Great is the art of beginning, but greater is the art of ending. Hmm.
Hmm.
How oddly, well, not really oddly, but that's quite true.
Kind of wish I had the skill of the other writer's quote. If I didn't know the ending of a story, I wouldn't begin. I always write my last line, my last paragraph, my last page first. I
Yeah,
never
like
know how my characters are going to end up.
I don't either, but I can see this one.
I mean, granted, usually my characters are dead, but I never know how, or if they're going to get better.
Like I said, I like this. I go into it not so much writing my last paragraph or whatever, but if I have no idea where I want them to end up, I don't necessarily always care how they get there, but I'm with there. I have to know, like at the end of this story, do I want so and so together, or do I want this person to end up here? You know, just sitting down and writing without some idea of where to go is kind of hard.
And it doesn't always help that the characters rarely want to go and do what you want them to do. So sometimes they fight the end.
So that's why, you know, like I said, I think making broad endings help with that. You know, like I said, not necessarily, you know, exactly this is exactly going to happen, but I want to make sure that this happens at the end. As far as like maybe not character A and character B together, but I want somebody to end up together at the end of the story, you know, or something like that. Of course, I'm using bad examples probably.
I'm curious about the next tip. How do you tell the truth without exaggeration if a majority of us are doing fiction and fantasy?
This seems to be more a matter of relative truth. The character's truth.
What if the
Hypo,
characters like to exaggerate? Then what?
I don't know. Try to sprinkle a little truth in their exaggeration. Hype will never substitute for a real honest-to-goodness core message. Have something of substance to say, then say it straight.
But what if I want to say it bent or crooked?
But if I want to say it left,
I do agree with the last tip, write with focus. That one can be very useful.
Hmm.
I think this one goes back to my other example from before
Hmm.
about the ending. Or at least fits into it.
kind of feel like this one goes without saying because lack of focus will cause a plot to fizzle out very quickly.
It's an interesting group of tips. Definitely worth trying to keep in mind when writing. Regardless of what your English teachers teach you. And with that, we might as well roll into the third piece of literary news. The 7 tips on writing a series. Over on Janice Hardy's blog. And unless I'm mistaken, none of us on the podcast currently actually write series.
I tried writing a sequel once.
I have a couple ideas for a few series, but they're not even at the outline stage, so I don't think those count.
I don't know, the whole idea of a series kind of intimidates me.
But there are plenty of authors out there that do write multi-book series.
Yeah, one of Will's favorites. Salvatore. Holy crap.
Well, that guy's just crazy. And I think he has an obsession with trilogies. Considering pretty much all of his stories are in groups of 3, even if the same characters are in multiple trilogies.
Yeah, as I was saying, he has like trilogies inside the greater series. It blows the mind. But another good one for that is Patterson, too.
Yeah.
I got about 8 books into his Women's Murder Club series before I was just, like, done. I think he's up to, like, 13 now or something like that.
Jeez. But for those of you listening that are doing series or thinking about doing series, tip number 1 is about the concept or hook behind the series, which kind of ties into the tip number 2, the overarching series conflict. Even if each individual book within a series is standalone to a degree within that universe, there should be some overarching something tying it together, even if it's loosely. Especially if the series is chronological in plot, I would think. And as the tip number 2 says, the series conflict will be more than just one problem that never gets solved. The world and characters will have a variety of problems and issues that can be tapped at any time in any book, so it always feels like things are happening. And there will be multiple conflicts to drive multiple novels. It doesn't have to be, I guess, the one problem spanning multiple books.
I like the series that use that each book has its own problem, but when they solve the problem in the first book, it creates the conflict of the second book.
Yeah, usually a resolution is never final. There's always something afterwards.
Yeah. Like, yay, we saved the world, but we also woke up the Kraken, you know?
And then book number 2 is putting the Kraken back to sleep,
Yeah.
which then makes Cthulhu all unhappy.
Yeah. And everything gets all fine and dandy when you're, done waking up every nasty thing in your world. Or you just get bored.
Mm. Tip number 3 is all about your characters. Most series tend to have at least one character that spans multiple books, usually the point of view character or the antagonist, depending on how things go. It's nice to have something that readers can be comfortable with and used to going from book to book, as long as there's some sense of continuity, I would think. They give the example of James Bond, who technically, I guess, in the books is theoretically the same person every time, no matter what. If you go by the movies, the continuity is a little confusing.
Yeah, because they change bonds all the time.
Hmm.
For that one, in the books, his real name is actually James Bond, right?
I'm pretty sure.
And I think the impression that I got from the movies is that whoever ends up as 007 adopts the name.
I think that's the unofficial opinion, which
I'm not
makes
a,
the most sense.
yeah, I'm not a big Bond fan, so I'm just curious. That's the only way I could figure to make all the different actors work, and
Hmm.
not be like, oh my god, they're just replacing an actor.
I think the only way we'll ever get confirmation is if one of the movies makes a nod to that in some way, shape, or form. Like one of the villains says, I could have sworn I killed James Bond, and it was just a different one.
It's like, oh, I heard you retired.
Not sure if 00 agents can actually retire, unless you count death.
Well, they gotta get old eventually, and not be effective anymore.
I think that's where the death part comes in.
Just kill them? Sheesh.
Well,
Fair.
eventually someone's going to get lucky.
Maybe. Okay. Okay, that one I'll give you.
And not in the James Bond type of lucky. Tip number 4, the series timeline. Theoretically, time is somewhat linear. So book 2 will follow upon the events of book 1 and continue so on until the series is done. It's pretty rare to go from book 1 to book 2 and then book 3 happens to precede book 1 and then book 4 is somehow in between all of that. Those tend to get pretty confusing after a while.
Oh yeah, when people use like time jumps and flashbacks and
Mm. Tends to go downhill once you start doing various time travel techniques within a series.
the most recent mind screw for that for me was Nagima, but that's a manga.
although not a book series. I keep thinking of the Tremors movies.
Oh God, those were just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the first three movies were in chronological order and they had a clear progression, but then book or movie number four went dozens of years into the past as a prequel to all of that. Yet there were various characters that they used the same actors for. So it just got really weird and confusing and went downhill from there.
Yeah, if you want to do like a prequel movie or something like that at the end, get different actors. Something. Get younger ones.
Yeah, it was meant to be the person's descendant or however that works. But it was just silly. And then the TV series didn't really help it at all. And it kind of ties into tip number 5, the series World, not the World series.
Unless that is your world.
True. Just as there should be some sort of chronological continuity, your world should have some continuity as well. If certain things happen in book number 1, they should be represented in book number 2 where appropriate. So if one of your characters sets fire to the Amazon forest in book 1, in book 2 it would be a little weird if the forest magically recovers. Unless your character happens to have magic. Then it's okay. And I think that if you take most of those tips into mind when working on a series, it ties into number 6, the reader's investment. As long as you take the time and effort and consideration to make your series readable and make sense, your readers will invest in it and continue reading through the series. If you stop caring about continuity and logic and all that, readers are probably going to start wandering away and searching for that cheese sandwich, I would think.
Yeah, because your readers want to know you care about it as much as they do.
Number 7, the series Bible. That's more of a back-end thing just for the writer. Are either you or Calvin familiar with with having a Bible for your series or stories?
I don't know if I really have a Bible for mine.
Seeing as how I really haven't done a series per se, never really had to put together a Bible of sorts like that.
I'm not sure who came up with the term of having a story Bible or series Bible. It's mostly just for you listeners that haven't heard of the term, it's kind of a reference book where you put in various bits of information like what is my character's family names, and what did they do at this plot point. Kind of just as an easy reference for when you need to go back to what did my character do at this point in the story? Where were they? In case you need to reference it in the future.
I usually have a sheet with at least like middle, like if I pick names for certain things or hair colors or eye colors or stuff like that. I tend to like I do have a sheet usually that it's usually scrawled and impossible for anyone but me to read.
Mm.
But so I'm not constantly flipping back. What did I say? What did I say?
Yeah, it's useful to have those little bits of information you're not necessarily going to remember offhand.
But it's the first thing the readers will pick up on if you happen to be inconsistent about it.
Yeah. Consistency is key. Or so my office would tell me.
Like when you put it that way, that kind of reminds me of like character wikis that you usually find online.
Yeah, that's kind of the digital equivalent of a story Bible.
I have those for my RP characters, actually.
Ah,
It's the only way I can keep track of what happens in each storyline, so I know what happens to the characters. You know, like I play. Well, actually, I'll use my RP character as a good example for this. I have a base storyline for the version of Ed that I play, but almost everybody that I play to, the stories end up going in like 20 different directions. If I didn't write them down, I would never remember who did what with him.
gotcha.
So I Google Docs is a great thing for that.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely a useful thing to have on hand when working on a story or something that spans a long time for us, not within the story. Because there's plenty of stupid little details about my characters I'm not going to remember a week or so from now. It helps to have it written down somewhere for easy reference.
I have an example of one if you want me to show it.
Yeah, sure.
My beautiful Major. Okay, so I'll screen share. Give me 1 second. Let's see. This is kind of like what I use for that.
Okay.
Like in the RP world, a lot of times we would consider this headcanoning, because a lot of this stuff that's written here isn't the stuff that's given in the story necessarily, but plot points and characters and things about the character that I've come up with. Things you have to remember. And yes, I have him. I go into this level of detail with my characters. The only thing I don't have in here is certain measurements that are only applied to the After Hours show. But I do have them. I get asked. Oh my God, I get asked.
Yeah, I've seen that on your Tumblr.
They want to know how big he is. I'm like, why do you care?
And it's funny, but like I can appreciate the amount of detail that you go into. It seems kind of like the people that ask really do like want to know those details.
It was funny. One day, the most recent time I got asked,
Mm-hmm.
I think I made Will uncomfortable. I'm like, come here! Help! Of course, I walked up to him. I'm going to unshare my screen now. How do I undo this? There it is, okay.
Hey.
So I walked up to him and I said, babe, I need a favor. And I go like this with my tape measure. To which because I needed to understand what a realistic size would be. I cannot believe that people really want to know this stuff. No amount of detail is too much, even if you don't use it in the story. Somebody down the line is going to ask.
Yeah, it's better to have it figured out beforehand rather than just make it up on the fly.
It
I
almost
know
feels
what
like
my character's shoe sizes are, blood types, everything. Even if it doesn't matter.
Well, you never know. It
feels like
may
a-
matter somewhere down the road.
it feels like a precursor to Rule 34.
I have character rules for Rule 34 too. Not that I do it, but if it exists, there's porn of it. If it exists, there's a gender bend of it. You name it, I usually can handle it. When it comes to Ed, I like it, but I can't.
Save it for the After Hours podcast.
Yes. Which people still need to donate for because I really want to do this.
Yeah, theoretically, we're still working on the logistics of getting the four of us together in one location for such shenanigans. So hopefully
It will
people
happen.
will donate beforehand.
It will happen.
Please.
Guys, we'll get to that though, because I think that's further in the notes. I'm jumping, I'm sorry.
Yeah, at this point, we might as well roll into the talking points since we're already over an hour into the podcast.
We're having fun,
Oh.
shush.
You're not the one that has to edit all of this.
Sure. I'm a distraction, I'm sorry.
But talking point number 1 for this week is how do your characters obtain their names? Or how do you go about figuring out names for all your various characters? Ed can just cheat, since some of yours are already pre-created.
Yeah, but when I need a name, I actually have to get. 90% of the time, people are coming to me looking for OC names and stuff. I mean, when I have to do it, I sit down and usually it's like, okay, this is the kind of person I want my character to be. The name is actually usually one of the last things I come up with. Because I'm a firm believer in names fitting a character as opposed, unless with the one exception of if you want to make fun of someone because their name doesn't fit them. But even then, you have to put the same kind of thought in it. What is the complete polar opposite to my character? What would people start laughing about? But I tend to use a lot of the baby name generators are great.
Mm.
It's funny, it's true.
Because a lot of them will give you like or name origins, meanings behind names. I mean, I know when people name their kids, they don't always go into such detail, but my characters are my kids, and yeah, they have to have a name that fits them.
Yeah, I usually have about a dozen or so names that I just use as a placeholder, and then once my characters have more characteristics and personality to them, I can better narrow it down and start figuring out, well, these people have the IQ of a potato, so I'll give them a stupid name. Or something silly like that.
For me, I really don't have a cache of names, but for names there'll usually be a theme or some random rhyme or reason behind it. Like for my hacker story, the main character's name is Richard Kane, which was kind of some wordplay on the term arcane.
It's a lot better than the thing that I was thinking of.
Dare I ask?
Not for this podcast.
All right. For the webcomic that will eventually come to light one day. Let's see. A lot of the names. Let's see. One character, character Charlie. Actually, I got that name from a character from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. One of the main characters in the movie is called Shadow of a Doubt, by the way. One one of the main characters is named Charlie. Well, actually, there's two Charlies in that movie. There's a young girl named Charlie, and her uncle Charlie, who she was named after. The female character's full name is Charlotte, but they call her Charlie since she was named after her uncle. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I basically stole that.
Nice.
As for some of the other secondary characters, secondary and tertiary characters in the webcomic, a lot of the names are like Greek-themed names.
I remember sitting down trying to figure out some of those. Will looking at me like, duh. Help me. I'm like, okay. I don't even remember now because it's been so freaking long.
I've been for genealogy purposes, for the character Chaz, a lot of his family has really funky names. I don't know why, it just seemed like a good idea. His father and brother are named Hephaestus. The name, in ancient Greece, Hephaestus was the Greek god of engineering and blacksmithing. And kind of going along with that theme, I want to give the father's brother the name Leonidas, since that's a pretty sweet Greek name. And I don't know, for some reason I would like to give the grandfather the name Cleophas. I actually knew somebody by the name Cleophas. He was a friend of the family. We used to call him Uncle Billy. We had no idea his name was Cleophas until like the last couple of months of his life. We just call him Uncle Billy. We knew his last name was Williams. We just thought his name was William Williams, but nah, it was Cleophas.
It's a great name, though.
It sounds like a really unusual name, but it's really a pretty badass name. It's Greek for vision of glory.
Interesting.
So with that mindset, I ended up putting together in my head like a small cache of like interesting sounding Greek names for Chaz's family. Because why not? So to summarize, there's usually a theme or some random meaning behind how I name characters.
My defaults always tend to be, if it's a female, they start off as Rowena, and if it's a male, it starts off as Silver or Slash.
Ah.
And once they gain a personality or life of their own, then they get a proper name. If they're lucky.
It's kind of interesting for Chaz's dad. I actually gave him the name Hephaestus first, and made his occupation an engineer. So it's kind of made the character fit the name instead of how most people do the other way around.
Sometimes there's just really awesome names that you have to find a way to use. But yeah, I can see building a character around a name just because, yeah, you have an epic name.
Yeah. I'll have to figure out what Uncle Leonidas would do. Would do as an occupation. I'll get to that one of these days. Some of the many random things I've been thinking about lately.
Well, with that, we might as well roll into talking point number 2. When sharing your writing, what measures, if any, do you take to prevent plagiarism?
I mainly use family and close friends as guinea pigs. Like, honestly, not a lot of people know that I write, and so there's usually like a very small cache of people that I'll go to review my writing.
Yeah, the same for me. Most of my writing, if it's for work, well, I'm a ghostwriter, so it doesn't really matter. And for my actual regular writing, I tend to send it to my editor or just a couple close friend beta readers that are also writers, so they're somewhat familiar with my style already, and I can't imagine that they would bother taking the time to plagiarize my writing, because most of the time at that level it is not worth plagiarizing. And once it gets to the point of being worthy of plagiarizing, it goes to my editor, and I trust her, so I'm not too worried about that. But I know it is a valid concern when you are trying to post stuff online for review or trying to find beta readers that you can trust.
I run into this problem a lot. Not so much in plagiarism like most people would think, though.
Or just not properly sourcing stuff.
Well, because this is actually a big concern, a big peeve of mine, and I make sure my Tumblr followers are well aware of it. And this is rampant on Tumblr if you're a role player. Just because I play a canon character, a lot of people think that they can take whatever they want. I put a lot of time and thought into the quirk, like I showed earlier. I put a lot of time and thought into the quirks that we are not given, and it jerks my chain a lot when somebody goes and thinks, "Oh, I can use this," without saying anything, or they just go and say, "Oh yeah, I see this fits," and they start using it for their interpretation of the character instead of coming up with it on their own. I mean, I don't mind sharing ideas and whatnot, but let your brain get there on its own, minded, So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I run into as far as plagiarism, and unfortunately, there's not much you can do to stop it. That is the nature of fandom writing, I suppose.
I think that extends into non-fandom writing as well sometimes. But well, for me, if I'm reading something that happens to entertain me a lot, or I really like a particular character, I know I want to try and pull some of those personality aspects or certain quirks and try and utilize it myself, but I try to keep aware of it and think, okay, well, I really like this style of a character. How can I warp it and meld it to my own purposes in my own style, rather than just copy-paste?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with, I'm with you on that one. There's nothing wrong with taking things that you like and reworking them, because then it becomes. But even when other authors do that, they at least nod to where they got it from.
Yeah, if they're polite about it.
Yeah. Decent writers. If you snatch something from somewhere, at least have the decency to say, I was reading this, and how so and so wrote this character really inspired me. I loved this, so I took this and expanded on it or something. At least nod to where you got it from. I can sit
Yeah.
on a soapbox, so I'm not going to at the moment. This is, like I said, this is a huge pet peeve, especially in my world. So,
Yeah, giving fair attribution where it's due is appreciated and to a degree expected.
I actually take flack for not allowing people to use my headcanons and stuff. But it's like, no, I have a brain of my own, so do you. Use it. And I get, yeah. Like I said, soapbox, I get off it.
How about talking point number 3? How do you manage your characters when they're resisting the plot or respond in unexpected ways?
Threaten him with milk. Seems to work.
Or to put it more broadly, threaten your characters with something they really don't like or are afraid of.
Yes.
That's always a good one.
But no, seriously, for me, a lot of times if the character's resisting it, to me, there's a reason why they're resisting it. I notice for me, a lot of times when I hit it, it's because I'm trying to make the character do something. Like, I'm trying to make Ed do something that he wouldn't do. And it's like my subconscious way of saying to myself, wait a minute, you're drifting into out of character territory here. So a lot of times I'll just let him go, even if it's not where I wanted him to go.
Yeah, I've had the same issues with some of my characters, especially in the slash and burn universe, where I can toss them in almost any situation I want, and I think, I want them to do this. But it's never, or it's not necessarily in the manner that I expect it to be. And if I try to push them towards a particular manner of dealing with it, it rarely goes well. So half the time it's better just to let them do their own thing and hope that they don't blow up too much.
For me, I really haven't found myself in like too many too many like situations where characters will like actively like rebel against a plot point. But if I'm like sensing any sort of resistance, I'll try a method similar to like what parents use to like coax their children into like say like taking medicine and things like that. Just figure out a fun little compromise where at face value doesn't seem like a compromise to, in the eyes of the character, but works out very similarly to like what you were trying to originally go for. Sometimes it actually works.
I'm not sure that would work well with some of my characters. Slash, go invade this compound. If you do, I'll give you a bottle of wine.
Not really talking about like bribes, but more like augment, like try to augment the plot to see if adapting it slightly might work better. If not, I'll do what Ed does and just try to let it go and try to rework it.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to just not fight them. Especially when your character has a harder head than you do.
Well, my last ditch effort is usually set something on fire. sometimes the character if necessary. That usually gets something to happen.
Insert bad Roy Ed joke here. Usually Roy says something to Ed about lighting a fire under his ass. Literally!
Yeah.
Speaking of...
And for all you listeners out there, I hope that gave you kind of an idea of how we respectively deal with our plots and characters and situations and whatnot. And if there are any questions you'd like to ask us directly for a future podcast episode, send them to wordninja@fcwriters.com, and they will be added to the list. And with that, a micro commercial break to talk about all the ways that you can help us continue doing what we do. As we've mentioned on previous episodes, we've now set up a PayPal donation button that's added to every podcast episode post on the website at fcwriters.com. You are welcome to donate any amount that you wish, and it goes towards the web hosting fees and just website management. And for every $69 in total that we obtain in donations, we will do an after hours podcast episode where there are no ratings and there are no restrictions beyond what YouTube allows.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And for those that are new to our podcast, the After Hours podcast is similar to this, only rated whatever the hell we feel like. We won't pull any punches, and we'll talk about anything. Primarily more of an adult nature than what this podcast happens to cover. And we are still taking questions. If there's anything specific you'd like us to cover in an After Hours podcast or Word Ninja podcast episode, both can be sent to wordninja@fcwriters.com. I think we're planning on trying to get an episode or two of the After Dark episodes compiled at the end of October. So whether we obtain the donations or not, we're still going to try and do a few recordings, and then once we hit the magical number, we will actually post them. So if there are any time-sensitive questions you'd like to ask us, make sure that we hit our donation amount by then, so that it can be posted accordingly. And we've also added affiliate links to the website for CreateSpace, Amazon, and Books A Million. So if there are any books or Amazon-type things that interest you, go to our website first and click on one of the three links at the bottom of our homepage, and it'll use a particular reference link that gives us a small little kickback for anything that you purchase from those three sites. And any proceeds that we get go directly back into the website and overall organization, so that we can continue giving such entertaining content.
yes, please donate. We love what we do, and it would help if we could get a little bit something back for all that we do, or just to kind of see that people are checking us out and appreciate what we do.
Yeah, if we've entertained you in any way, shape, or form, made you smile, laugh, or just think that we are a group of crazy, weird people talking out to the internet, we would appreciate some form of monetary appreciation. Felt like I had a better term in my head, but I lost it. Yeah, with that, we might as well roll into the What Have You Been Reading segment. Since we're still waiting on Ed, I'll kick things off, I guess. I've been reading Knight Errant by Katie Sarge this week, or rereading. I've already read it multiple times before, but it's a book that I like to go back to every once in a while. And for those of you unfamiliar with this particular author, it's kind of a space opera type dealy, only silly, for lack of a better term. To give you an idea, the first sentence of this book is, "Of the hundreds of lives Eve Marcori saved before, during, and since the war, mine was the most important." Only slightly arrogant. But the back cover kind of gives a little bit more of "A scoundrel reformed. Or is he? From pickpocket and con artist to little brother and trusted comrade is a tough transition, but Taro is making it. His new sister, Marine Eve Marcori, promised his dead mother she'd look after him. That means family, home, her interstellar freighter, and a solid future. In 4 years, she has trained Taro extensively. The next step is college. Taro would rather be shot, but he'd honor Eve and her plans, or die in the attempt. When Eve rescues former Joy Boy and now layabout Rafe Ballard, death seems the likely outcome, especially after Taro's attempt to get rid of Rafe gets them both kidnapped by the jealous husband of Rafe's last girlfriend. Forced into partnership and freedom with Rafe, Taro begins to see him differently. Kind, funny, and caring, Rafe is all Taro never knew he wanted and all he can't have. Eve's plans leave no room for a playboy boyfriend who can never measure up, and Taro can't let her down.
Oh my.
It is a pretty entertaining read. And we actually did a series-wide review for that author up on the website as of Friday. It's actually the book 1 of 4 so far in the Dreamverse, as it has been titled. And I'm still working on trying to get the author, Katie Sarge, either for an episode of the podcast or just as a one-on-one interview in the future. That is still in the works. Out of curiosity, what have the rest of you been reading lately?
Reading? I admit I'm bad. I don't read. Not right now, anyway. Not at the moment. I've actually been throwing most of my attention into my drawing than anything else. Even my RP muses have been my writing muses have been quiet.
For me, I'm still slowly making my way through Warcraft.
How is it so far?
It is a fun little read. Like it's it's actually very interesting. Well, not really life lessons, but life tips disguised as a fun little 50 style comic, 50 style animated comic. Let me see if I can. Like, there's a chapter actually talking about how to like deal with your financial situation. Like, if you're dealing with debt, you try to figure out actually breaking down your monthly finances, trying to figure out like how to deal with like overspending and just general money management.
But what type of writer has money problems?
Yeah, let me go through the table of contents. You talk about finances, housing, food, fashion, health, transportation, entertainment, education, and emergencies. All in this fun little style here. I'm not sure if you guys can uh, see the drawing style here.
It's kind of cute.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool how it was drawn, and excuse me. And even though like a lot of it is kind of serious topics, the drawing style kind of actually makes it a lot less off-putting, and like it makes people comfortable enough to like actually like give it a thorough read through, and you'll be surprised at how a lot of this can help you in your daily life.
Any chance you'd be willing to do a review of that for the website once you're done reading it?
Oh, sure, I could do that. I wouldn't mind that at all.
I wouldn't mind giving the book a read myself. It sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think I read the teaser before, but I could do it again if you like.
Yeah, sure.
Horcraft is the essential comic book guide to practical urban and suburban frugality. Whether you're new to independent living, a recent college graduate, or just downshifting to a simpler lifestyle, Horcraft can help you with everything from finding a home to finding a hobby, dinner to debt relief, education to entertainment. It's time to cut your expenses, or just make sure they never pile up. I'm gonna throw that all in show notes.
Okay. I feel like a book like that should be required reading for all English majors. Or at this point,
And
college students in general.
Anybody.
I think it kind of feels like this is like the ideal book for like today's 18 to 35 crowd.
And for all you listeners that would like a copy of that book for your very own, go through our website first and use one of our links to go purchase it.
Yes, please.
And I'm fairly certain that those links give a minimal discount, possibly 5 or 10% in general. That way it helps everyone.
How can you say no to a discount?
I'm kind of tempted to skip over the "What have you been writing" segment for this week, considering I have not been writing for this week.
I've
Like,
done a
I,
little,
I
but
think this,
again, I'm a role play writer, so I write at least a little bit almost every day.
I think last week was a very off week for me. I really couldn't get a whole heck of a lot done. Like I wasn't having a terribly good life week.
Yeah, I think I spent about 30 hours of my work week just buried in Excel numbers and whatnot. So I didn't have much brain power for actual writing. And then trying to fight off a summer cold over the weekend did not help.
My week was spent. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Well, with that, I guess we can quickly cover just the upcoming events, which have not changed since last week's episode, but for those of you new to listening or watching us, next Saturday, the 24th of August, the Connecticut Comic Con. It's a one-day convention at the Marriott in Trumbull, Connecticut. We will not be vendoring, but I will be attending, and I'm hoping to network with some of the writers and authors there. And it's possible I'll get an interview in, but no guarantees. And we're also kind of scoping things out for next year to see if it's a viable opportunity for full coverage writers. I'm hopeful, though. And
Yes.
coming...
I was just gonna say it does look promising though.
Yeah, they keep claiming it's like the biggest comic convention in Connecticut or some such. I think it's focused primarily on actual comic books and graphic novels, unlike Connecticon, which is a little more all-encompassing.
Hmm.
But I think they do have a lot of actual comic book script writers and illustrators and whatnot, which should be interesting.
Excellent.
And for September, there is a regional event for Fairfield County Writers Group. They'll be having a 3-hour write-in at the Westport Library on September 14th from 2 to 5 p.m. Fuller details will be posted on their Facebook page within the next week or two. And we're still figuring out logistics for the next workshop sessions of surviving the novel writing process. Chances are it's now going to be split up into smaller sessions rather than a 5-hour event. It's going to be a 1 to 2-hour event, and then we're going to have it a couple times round over the course of a week at varying locations. I'm still trying to pin down reservation options for that. And with that, it's time for writing prompts. Let's see. The writing prompts for this week have been posted on fcwriters.com. And I need to update that template at some point. We are going to be removing the various restrictions on what you can send us as a submission. It's going to be a little more free-for-all.
Yay! Like free for all.
The basic premise is going to be use some combination of at least one or two of the one-liners or one-worders in a flash fiction piece, and email it to wordninja@fcwriters.com, and we will live read some of these submissions. And we're going to remove the length restriction as well, so it's not going to be a 1,000 word limit anymore, but we do request that it is not too long, because we will be live reading it, and I don't really want to have dramatic readings that last for half an hour, especially considering our podcast is already averaging about 2 hours just as is. So if you do want to write a longer piece, it would be appreciated if you have some markers as to where we could pause, so we can do a segment one week and then continue a following week.
Or at least provide a link to, if you would like to read more.
Yeah, at the least have a solid breaking point where we can pause and say, if you want to read the full story, go to this link and read the rest. And a link to the Muse food will also be in the show notes as well. As some of the examples for the one-liners are, now who would go and sell this? Or I'm boarding up the door.
You have a purpose?
Better than just having a porpoise. There's your writing prompt right there. I think ideally if you could use at least one of the sentences and one of the words throughout the whole piece, so you can utilize both sections, that would be appreciated.
Oh, see, I could have fun with some of these and my boys. I could just, right now, just the last one-liner. Stop reading and pay attention already.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing Roy yelling at Ed.
Yeah, that was exactly what I pictured when you mentioned that.
I just see him sitting on the couch. Roy's trying to tell him something. And he's got his nose stuck in the book, is completely not paying attention. It's pissing Roy off. I might actually have to do this one.
Yeah, I had a couple ideas of my own for some of those sentences, but I haven't had a chance to work on it quite yet. But maybe by next episode, we will have something to read.
That'll make that cool.
I'm
And
not really...
I like the prompts you've been putting up on the Tumblr page too.
Yeah, I've just been trying to find any ones that entertain me to some degree. And we started adding picture prompts from story cubes. Or at least that's an initiative I'm hoping to do soon, or more regularly. Those of you not familiar, story cubes.
Ooh.
It is a set of dice with various funky images on them, and it's up to you to create a story out of them all.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
And it is very entertaining. Half the fun is trying to actually interpret the images.
There's a lot you can do with a pine tree.
Okay, there's a masterful one-liner right there.
The question is, can it be used on this podcast, or do we have to save it for the After Dark one?
Depends on how you interpret using the pine tree.
Yes.
You know, you can build log cabins and stuff from it, which is completely harmless.
Sorry, mine going many different directions.
I was thinking of something a little more useful in the pine cone department, but okay. I can't mention that on this one. Too much more than that.
I can't mention what I was thinking on this podcast either.
See, people, this is why you need to donate the $69. If you want to know what we're thinking, you need to donate and let us do the after hours.
Yes.
Otherwise, you will never know what our interpretations of that one will be.
Luigi, why are you playing with Tetris blocks?
So many possible combinations.
Speaking of combinations, I think I might have an idea for use of a few of these one-worders.
Are they podcast appropriate?
I think so. It'll just be more silly than, like, inappropriate.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we can handle silly.
You just have to be wary of innuendo, that's all.
Well, innuendos are fine. It's just when we point blank start saying things that it can get a bit awkward.
That's what I mean.
And I may have to see what I can come up with for Pink Laughter Machine.
Oh, I'm curious. And slightly afraid.
Actually, when you said Pink Laughter Machine, I was just thinking of somebody tickling a Kirby. It was completely innocent. It was just funny.
Oh god, that's hilarious.
My brain works in
Oh.
weird ways.
I want to go draw that now.
Oh, so tickling a pink Kirby?
Yes. Oh god, I might do that after the podcast.
And for you listeners out there, if you donate and get us up to $69, who knows what else we'll be able to create and show for you.
I will draw smut for you.
I think with that, it's about time to wrap things up for the week.
Kind of interesting, even though we had one less person, we still had an equal amount of hilarity and insanity.
I think any combination of our group, even if it's just two of us, is going to result in about the same amount of insanity and ridiculousness.
I thrive on ridiculousness?
I think we all do.
I think that's how we, that's what we use just to survive today's. The sheer ridiculousness keeps us going.
We gotta keep entertained somehow.
Mm.
And if we can entertain others while doing it, all the better.
Yes, 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 yes.
Alright, with that, I think it's attributions time. Where can viewers and listeners find us all? I'll start on my left with Calvin.
All right. You can find me on FC Writers. I'm the big fancy tech webmaster fixer upper guy. You can, if there's any issues with the Full Coverage Writers website, you can email me at thewebmaster@fcwriters.com. Let's see what else. I'm also the digital media editor for the music blog Riffraff. You can find that at riffraff.net, riffraf.net. You can email me there at calvin@riffraff.net. If you're interested in checking out some of my work, interested in seeing all the things that I code on a regular basis, you can find that at calvin.cwillia.ms, calvin.cwillia.ms, and my email address there is calvin@cwillia.ms. If you're interested in my random thoughts and goings on throughout the day, you can find me on Twitter as well as Instagram at ccwii, and on Tumblr, my Tumblr handle is instacal. I think that about covers it.
And now for Ed.
Primarily for me, the Full Metal Edward Elric at tumblr.com. All my writing, that's probably, I'm there almost 24/7, so that's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. I do have two Twitter accounts, Ed the Alchemist and Midnight Alchemist. One is more roleplay based, one is more personal. Not that I use them much, but you can find me there. And of course my DeviantArt. Don't laugh, it's Lady Midnight with a Y. .deviantart.com. A lot of more. That's more my art though than my writing, but there is some writing there. I check that at least once a week. But yeah, Tumblr is probably the best place to get a hold of me. I've also been poking at the FC Writers Tumblr page.
It might be worth a note that if people do try to reach you via Tumblr, they should not do it at the office.
Yeah, my Tumblr is, well, my Tumblr is occasionally NSFW. It's actually been pretty rare these days that I've been posting. Maybe once or twice, I think in a week, I put something up that's not safe for work. And usually the writing is under read mores, so that way it's not glaring.
Mm.
But there is the occasional pornographic or at least suggestive picture that goes up. So most of it's tame, but I still have the NSFW warning on my blog just to be safe.
Mm. So maybe just go there with caution.
Yes. If you see something with a read more and you are in a public place or at work, I don't recommend clicking on it. 99% of the time, what's under there is going to be smut. Every once in a while, I have a private conversation that way. Which is completely innocent. It's just a private conversation.
Sure it is.
Hey. Private conversations are typically clean. It's just that I don't want everybody and their grandmother to read it. You at least have to click a read more.
Fair enough. Alright, and for me, you can generally find me via Twitter at silver_wolf85, or contact me directly via email at Charles Muir, that's Charles M-U-I-R, at fcwriters.com. And if you would like to view more of our products and offerings, go to fcwriters.net. fcwriters.com. That's fcwriters with an S.com. We have a literary Twitter. It's fcwordninja. We're over on Tumblr at fcwordninja.tumblr.com. And we're also on YouTube and Facebook, but it's easier just to search for either Word Ninja or Full Coverage Writers. And with that, we will see you all next week.
Cheers to you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Titles of the 5 mistakes rather amusing. I've skimmed some of the rest of it, but I haven't gotten a chance to go into detail about them. But for those of you listening, writing mistake number 1, happy people in a happy land. Stories are not usually just sunshine and unicorns. There has to be conflict and chaos to make things interesting and make sure the plot keeps on moving.
I mean, this one, for me, I don't see any real problem with starting out maybe like the first page or two, having a happy little sunshine world, because half the fun is destroying said happy little sunshine world.
True.
Yeah,
there's allowed to be a minimum amount of peace.
Yeah. Excuse me while I be attacked by a cat. You pain in the ass, I'm gonna lock you in the other room.
No peace allowed for you.
No, never. You're not going to randomly attack me. You're going to stay where I can see you. We have a podcast, cat. Because I'm tired of being attacked. Read a story about you. Yeah.
I think the mistake number 1 can be easily summed up by the second paragraph in that one, where it says, but readers actually engage with plot via trouble, threat, change, or challenge. If everything is just happy and peaceful throughout the whole book, why should we bother reading it?
Especially because nobody's life is like that, so they can't identify with it. If you've got that perfect, happy little life, you're deluding yourself.
Either that or you have some very good medication.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that.
And it kind of ties into the mistake number 2, a world without fear. The best novels, the ones that stay with you all the way to the end and beyond, have the threat of death hanging over every scene. Wouldn't necessarily say every scene, but there has to be some sort of consequence or challenge the characters face, I would think.
Well, she goes into, like, different kinds of death, too, not just, like, physical death.
Oh yeah, she split it up in, I think, 3 ways.
Yeah.
There's physical, professional, and psychological. Physical is kind of obvious. Professional is more along the lines of, like, you screwed your career irrevocably. Well, almost irrevocably. Well, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And then you also have psychological death, dying on the inside. It's basically your character implodes under the weight of their own sadness and trying to deal with life.
Sounds my specialty.
I usually deal more with the physical deaths and consequences.
Psychological deaths seem to be more my speed for some reason.
I don't know, because somehow it seems more painful to like watch them deteriorate from the inside out like that.
Hmm.
But then again, like I said, it's more painful and thus we torture them a bit more. Or we use a combination of physical death and psychological death.
Maybe you can go for the trifecta and do it by killing them through their job.
Or their job kills someone they love, which makes them die inside. Kind of fun with cop ones doing that.
We are not really helping the stereotype of us being horrible. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Word Ninja podcast. We are a 2-hour ramble of writers surviving muses and battling writer's blocks. We're here today on August 28th, 2013 for episode 8.
18th.
Close enough.
Like I said, it ain't that late yet. Whoa, where the hell did August go?
And now I've lost my train of thought. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm Charles. My co-hosts and distractors are Calvin and Ed. We are not joined by Will today. He got kidnapped to go to work.
Stupid work captors.
Wild place of work.
Yeah, he's too busy off making money.
Tends to happen sometime.
It does come in handy every once in a while, I guess.
True, true.
I wanted yawn. Don't look at me.
As usual, we tend to kick off our little podcast with literary news for the week. And for this week, we're starting things off with the 5 biggest fiction writing mistakes and how to fix them. And this one can be found at writersdigest.com. It's from the 13th of this month, and the proper link will be in our show notes after the full episode. Alright, there it goes. My internet is unusually slow today, so it takes a while to load for some reason.
No
I
worries.
was scanning this one. I actually run into these problems a lot with people in the RP world.
I just found that
Unexpected twist you throw ahead your characters. I mean, if like everybody gets anvils dropped on them in, like somebody gets anvils dropped on them in every chapter, it might lose its edge slightly. Or maybe you can just change it up slightly. Instead of an anvil, maybe a chair or piano.
I don't know, an anvil's pretty durable. I don't think you'll be able to soften that one too much. I think it'll keep its edge.
Wow. Okay.
Just a little food for thought there.
But I like to use things like phones ringing or noises outside or just simple little things.
How about mistake number 5, the lost love? Does everyone really need to find a lost love? If you lost it, sometimes there's a reason for it.
See, this one, I don't know. I think this is a typical cliche of young adult writing.
Maybe we're misinterpreting it, and it's more for between the writer itself and the novel, as I'm just rereading the first paragraph. Writing a book is like falling in love. Outlining and planning are the wooing. Drafting the novel is your commitment to marriage. But at some point, you and your book will likely need some marriage counseling. Because when you lose the verb for your material, it shows people to our characters, are we?
I do not deny this fact at all.
We never said that we weren't.
I am very guilty of mistake number 3, the marshmallow dialogue. I have a lot of trouble with writing too much fluff.
I get forced into it a lot. Because like I said, I'm an RP writer, so I get, when you get this kind of stuff, it's kind of hard not to respond with that kind of stuff, because they give you absolutely squat to work with. Probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
I found that doing the marshmallow type of dialogue writing helps on the back end, just to try and figure things out between the characters, but then I cut about 80 to 90% of it before any readers actually get to see it.
Okay. Hi.
Well, that seems to be exactly how the author here tells you how to combat that. Just start off fluffy and just hack away the fluff afterwards.
You just use your red pen like a machete.
Yes.
Oh, I don't have my red pen at the moment.
Mistake number 4, predictability. That one can be a little trickier to deal with, depending on what you're writing about and how well known it can be. Their fix of just put something unexpected in every scene can only work to a certain degree, I would think. How many unexpected things can you throw at your characters before it just starts getting silly?
It depends on what kind of